0 and negative indices. So let's start with this one. 7 raised to 0 is what? Negative 6 raised to 0. The base is negative 6. So therefore, this is what? Negative 8 raised to 0. The base here is the 8. So copy the negative, and 8 raised to 0 is what? So therefore, the answer is negative 1. 2x squared y raised to 0. The index of y is 0. So therefore, we have 2x squared. Then y raised to 0 is 1. So 2x squared times 1 is 2x squared. So for 0 indices, if a is a non-zero real number, then a raised to 0 is just equal to 1. Let's have these examples. Number 1, 2015 raised to 0. Since the base is 2015 and it is raised to 0, therefore the answer is 1. Letter B, negative 7 raised to 0. The base is negative 7 and it is being raised to the index 0. So therefore, the value is 1. 3y raised to 0. The index 0 is for the base y. So just copy the 3, and y raised to 0 is just equal to 1. So 3 times 1, the answer is 3. 3y raised to 0. The base is the 3y, being raised to the index 0. So therefore, the answer is 1. Next is number 2a. 3 raised to 0 times 3 raised to 3 divided by 3 raised to 2. So we'll do the operations from left to right. So 3 raised to 0 is just equal to 1 times 3 raised to 3 divided by 3 raised to 2. 1 times 3 raised to 3 is just 3 raised to 3. Then divided by 3 raised to 2. Then based from the previous laws of indices, if you are dividing expressions with the same base 3, just copy the 3 and subtract the indices. So 3 minus 2. So the answer is 3 raised to 1 or simply 3. Letter B, 3 raised to 0 plus 3 raised to 2. 3 raised to 0 is just 1, then plus 3 raised to 2 is 9. So 1 plus 9 is 10. Let's have the negative indices. Let's observe this one. For number 1, 3 raised to negative 2. 3 raised to negative 2 is actually a numerator because this is over 1. What you need to do is to reciprocate this one, so it will become 1 over 3, but make the index positive. So 3 raised to the power of 2. And to simplify it, it is 1 over 9. For number 2, 1 over 2 raised to negative 4. The 2 raised to negative 4 is part of the denominator. So reciprocate. So it will become 2 and make the index positive, raised to 4 over 1. And 2 raised to 4 is 16. For number 3, a squared b raised to negative 3 all over c raised to negative 2. We have two bases, b and c, which have negative index. So first, b raised to negative 3 is part of the numerator. Bring it down to the denominator and make the index positive 3. Now for the c raised to negative 2, it's part of the denominator. Bring it up to the numerator and make the index positive 2. So the final answer is a squared c squared all over b raised to 3. So for the negative indices, if a is a non-zero real number, then a raised to a negative index n is just equal to 1 all over a raised to the positive index n. Let's have these examples. A raised to negative 1 times a raised to 3 times a raised to negative 2. We'll perform the laws of indices first and we'll make the negative index to positive at the end. So a raised to negative 1 times a raised to 3 times a raised to negative 2, we are multiplying expression with the same base. So copy the base and then add the indices. So negative 1 plus 3 plus negative 2. So we'll have a raised to 0. But since from the 0 indices, a raised to 0 is 1. So the answer is 1. Number 2, b raised to 5, c raised to 2, then raised to negative 1. So in this case, we'll copy the base b and multiply the index negative 5 to the index outside negative 1. So negative 5 times negative 1. Then copy the base c and then multiply its index 2 to the index outside negative 1. So 2 times negative 1. And then simplify, we'll have b. So negative 5 times negative 1 is positive 5. Then c, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. But we still have a negative index. So this is actually over 1. So b raised to 5 is not a problem. It has a positive index, so copy on the numerator. And then all over, c raised to negative 2 is part of the numerator. Bring it down to the denominator and make its index positive. So the answer is b raised to 5 all over c squared. Okay, for number 3, 5f raised to 0 divided by 3 times f raised to negative 2 raised to 2. So, let's simplify first this one. Okay, so f raised to 0 is just equal to 1, so this is 5 times 1. And divided by, okay, and this one is 3, and then copy the base f. What you need to do with the indices negative 2 and 2 is to multiply, and that will become negative 4. This can be written as 5 all over 3f raised to negative 4. Since f has a negative index and it's part of the denominator, you have to move it up to the numerator with 5. So 5f, and then make its index positive 4 all over 3. So the answer is 5f raised to 4 all over 3. For number 4, 16d raised to negative 2e all over 2d raised to negative 1e raised to 3. Let's simplify first the denominator. So copy 16d negative 2e all over, the index of 2 is 1, the index of e is 1. So copy the base 2 and multiply its index 1 to the index outside 3, so that's 3. And then d, multiply its index negative 1 to the index 3, so negative 3. And e, multiply its index 1 to the index 3, so that's 3. Simplify further, so this is 16d raised to negative 2e all over 2 cubed is 8. And then d, negative 3e raised to 3. Then we can simplify it by dividing 16 by 8. So 16 divided by 8 is actually 2. And then copy the base d. Since this is division, we have to subtract the indices. Negative 2 minus negative 3. Copy the base e, and then subtract the indices 1 minus 3. So it will become 2d. So negative 2 minus negative 3 is 1. And then e, 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Since we still have a negative index, which is 2, and part of the numerator, bring it down to the denominator. This is actually over 1. So it will become 2d all over e, but make its index positive 2. So the answer is 2d all over e squared. Sample. So let's start with the division and multiplication as our operations. Okay, so let's start with this. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then copy the base h. Since this is division, you have to subtract the indices. So 2 minus negative 2. Then copy the minus, multiply this. So copy the base h and add the indices 1 and 3. Okay, then copy the minus. And this one, our negative index is on the denominator. So bring it up on the numerator with 4. So 4. And then h and make the index positive 4. And then simplify. So it will become 3h to the power of 4 minus h to the power of 4 minus 4h to the power of 4. And you can now perform the operation subtraction. So these are all like terms. So copy the h4. And then 3 minus 1 minus 4. So the answer is negative 2h to the power of 4. So this is the summary. For zero indices, if a is a non-zero real number, then a raised to 0 is just equal to 1. For negative indices, if a is a non-zero real number, then a raised to a negative index n is just equal to 1 all over a raised to the positive index n.